So, the Vedic origin of Murti Puja is the subject of my talk today. So, let me begin with a Mangalacharan. I say something about the lotus feet of Sita. Vande videhatanaya padapundarikam Kaishor saurava samahita yogi chittam Hantum tratapamarisham muniham sasevyam Sanamana sali paripite paragapunjam. Now the topic is very important because it has been discussed for a very, very long time, almost 150 years in India, as to how did Murti Puja or worship of the idol, what is called in Greek eidolon, started, and whether it is an original form of worship to India or is it not. Now, in the 19th century, there was a raging debate started by Arya Samaj, its founder Swami Dayanand Saraswati, that Murti Puja was actually not part of the original Vedic thought. And on the basis of the Vedic Samhitas, that is the four Samhitas, Rig, Sam, Yajur and Atharva, he contested with people and he said that no, there was no Murti Puja in the Vedic Samhita and therefore it was a later intrusion. However, we know that since very early times, there has been worship of the Murti. Why is it that this debate had become so important in the 19th century? The reason was very simple. The Christian missionaries who came to India and who were worshippers of Patros or Father, God the Father, His Son and the Holy Ghost, they thought that worship of any kind of idol, any kind of murti was an error and it was not the right thing. As a matter of fact, it was an aberration, and according to the Abrahamic religions, it is something which takes you away from God and it is closer to the devil. So in India there started a whole movement about the purity of what is Hindu religion, and many people then said that Murti Puja is not original, and under the impact of this Christian thought in India, we had many thinkers, not just Arya Samaj, but the Brahmo Samaj, the Deva Samaj, and various other movements. So Murti Puja has been relegated as an inferior form, and there are many in India, particularly the Anglophonic people, those influenced by Western philosophies who think that it is an inferior form of worship. However, it is very well known that since very, very ancient times, Murti Puja has been there. Now certainly, in the Vedic text, that is the four Vedas, the Devatas, the gods, Indra, Pushana, and all the rest of them, they have a shape. They have a characteristic. They are like us in many ways, like human beings. They like things, they dislike things. And their nature, although divine, is also human. So they are people who behave like us in many manners, and they also accept gifts. So they are not formless. As a matter of fact, they have a form, they have a shape, they are what is called sagun. But in the Vedic pantheon and in the Vedic form of worship, which was the method of worshipping through yajna, the praise of gods or the portrayal of gods is done through words. So what we do is we make a portraiture or a murti which is a vak murti, or which is a stavan, or which is a praise done through words. Now these gods are invited to partake of the havish. They come, they accept our gifts, and they go back. Now how is it that the worship of gods without any material form, without any material form in the sense that there was no idol, how is it that out of the concept of the devata as with a form described through words, how is it that this came to manifest itself as an idol? Now that is the question. Now many people have given a thought to this, many historians have thought about it, there are many theories about it, and one of the main theories which has been doing the rounds for a long time is that the Vedic Aryans were people who did not have any idol worship or Murti Puja, but other people in India, they had this. Now we are all familiar with this whole theory that the Vedic Aryans were not original to India, that they came from somewhere in Europe, God knows as to where, and there are many theories about their homeland. But they came from outside, and when they met the people who had idols here, people who are described in many ways, people of the Indus Valley, sometimes they are called Dravidians, sometimes they are called Dasas, sometimes they are called Anasas, all kinds of names are given. But it is said that it is those people who were worshipping idols, and the worship of idols was taken by the Vedic Aryans into their pantheon, and that is how it is said that this origin of the Vedic gods into Murti took place. Now I do not want to go into these theories because there is no historical proof of what is suggested. First of all, we now know that there is no absolute, correct, reliable historical proof of the Vedic Aryans coming from outside India. Most probably they belong to India because there is no text like the Rig Veda which exists, or no text highly similar to Rig Veda which exists outside India. If there is Zend Avesta, then that is a much later text. So obviously the Vedic Aryans who were native, how did they develop the form of Murti worship? This is the question. Today I want to talk to you about a certain very clear evidence that is present in the Natya Shastra of Bharat Muni, which shows that Murti Puja could have originated from what is called nritta or dance, and this is the dance form which is described in the 4th chapter of the Natya Shastra. and that this dance form is part of the whole development of theatre, which again has a Vedic origin. The art of theatre, or the art of Natya as it was called, and as it is enshrined and detailed in all its principles in the text of Natya Shastra, this art of Natya is entirely of the Vedic origin, and it is described as to how this new art form came into being. And once we see how drama developed as a new art form, we will see that as one of the constituents of drama, dance also developed, and it is from dance that we had the origin of Murti Puja. We had the origin of making the icons of gods and goddesses, and that whole process is described in the Natya Shastra. So let me go to the story of the origin of Natya, or origin of theatre. And you of course are familiar with it, especially those of you who have spent a lifetime in studying dance and knowing about dance. You are familiar, but let us visit that story once again, just to analyze it and just to see what are the different parts of it, and how is it that theatre or Natya comes into existence by taking one element after another, and all these elements are of Vedic origin. The point I am driving at is that whatever we have in Natya Shastra is something which is derived from the Vedic ritual. There is no need for us to go outside the Vedic ritual and the development of Vedic ritual to look around for some other form of worship in India in order to arrive at Murti Puja. We see it here in India itself. So let us go to the story. Now, as you are familiar, that this story, which is not just a story, which is not just a myth, but is actually a record of how an art form developed. How from Vedic rituals and various ceremonies which were conducted around Yajna, how various constituents of those ceremonies went into the making of Natya. So the story begins that Indra went to Brahma and he said, Kridaniyakam ichhamo drishyam shravyam cha yad bhavet. I need a plaything, I need something to delight me, Kridaniyakam, which can be heard and seen at the same time. So which is going to be a new art form, because all other art forms can either be seen or be heard. Music is heard, painting is seen. But here he said, I want something which has both these qualities. And then he said that look, in this world today there is a lot of ignorance. There are many people who are unable to go for higher education. Higher education meant education which was around the study of Vedas and Upanishads and Vyakaran and all that. So there are many people, especially people of the working class, who are unable to get any knowledge. So we want that the knowledge and the deep knowledge of the Vedic principles of life should reach them. Therefore, tasmat srija aparam vedam panchamam sarvavaranikam. And he said that you should make a Veda, you should make something, a system of knowledge, a carrier of knowledge, which is sarvavaranik, which is available to all classes of society, all sections of society, Brahmana, Kshatriya, Vaishya and Shudra totally should be available. So, Brahma said, okay, we are going to do this for you. And he gave him the idea of what is going to be the Natya Veda. And he said that this Natya Veda is going to have three qualities: Bharati, Satvati and Aravati. And Bharat Muni, he performed some play in which Bharatim Satvatim Chaiva Vrittim Aravatim Tatha Samashritah Prayogastu Prayukto Vai Maya Dvijaha. So he is narrating the whole story to other learned Dvijaha people, and he says that I did this. But when I did this prayog, which had Bharati, Satvati and Aravati, these three vrittis. Bharati is speech largely, Satvati is intense emotion, and Aravati is action. Action which is violent, action which is destructive. When he performed theatre which had all these three elements, there was a problem. Something was missing. Something was deeply missing. And what was missing? Shringara was missing. The soft qualities were missing. Eroticism was missing. And therefore, theatre was not a great success. So, Brahma, sensing the lack of something very vital, said, Ath ahamam suruguruhu kaishikiyam api yojaya. So Suruguru or Brahma said that Bharat Muni, what you should do is to bring in Kaishiki. Kaishiki means the fine erotic feeling between men and women, between a man and a woman, Shringar, the subject of love, Rati. And unless this is there, unless this beautiful art is part of your total art, there will be no success. So Brahma said, okay then, if that is so, then he asked for that most essential element which could possibly become the element of love, or which could be the contribution to the creation of Shringara in theatre. And obviously, so far the production of Bharat Muni was along with his disciples, and all these disciples and Bharat Muni himself, these were men. So it was a men-only production. And when it was a men-only production, it was not a success. And in order to bring Shringar, female actors had to be brought in. And he asked from Brahma that they should be given to him. So please give me the proper, the appropriate dravya. Dravyam tad bruhid vijasattamaha. You should be able to give it to me. And so, Diyatam Bhagavan Dravyam Kaishikyaha Samprayojakam. What is it? Nritta Angahara Sampanna Rasabhava Kriyatmaka. So, what is required now is Nritta Angahara Sampanna. So far all the actions of Satvati, Aravati and Bharati, the speech-oriented actions in theatre, were without dance, without nritta. and the several postures of dance which are called the Angaharas. So he says that you should give it to me. And he had an inkling of this, that there is something like that which exists. And he said that I know. Drishta maya bhagavata neelakanthasya nrityatah kaishiki shlakshana nepathya shringara rasa sambhava. He said that I have known that Shiva has been dancing, and in his dance there is nritta and angaha. In his nritta there are angaharas, and there is shringara rasa. So please give this to me. Now all this is given, and music is brought in. Musicians like Swati and Narad and various Gandharvas, they are also included into Natya. Now let me recapitulate the story in terms of theatrical elements. Now you are all familiar that when Brahma made theatre, Jagraha Pathyam Rigveda, he took Pathya or text from the Rigveda, he took Samagan, he took music from Samaveda, he took Abhinay from Atharva Veda, and he took Rasa from Atharva Veda, and he took Abhinay from Yajurveda. So these were the four elements that he had taken. Now you should look upon this thing not as just as a story which is in order to elevate the Vedas or just for Mahatmya of the Vedas. These are very practical things. The Rigvedic tradition is given to the preservation of the text. That the text, that is the Vag Sampatti or the Mantra Rashi or the mantras, the textual element of the Veda, the Rig Veda, is to be preserved through the tradition of Rig. Then the music in the Yajna is preserved through the tradition of Sam. Then the movements which are done by Ritvik and Brahman and various other Purodhas and various other priests who are performing the Yajnas, the movements, they are connected to Yajurveda. And Ras comes from Atharva Veda, because Atharva Veda is the Veda which preserves the knowledge of Vanaspati, Aushadhi and various other natural products from which we derive our medicinal qualities and from which we derive our medicine. So he said that look, these are the four things which are taken as very practical things from the Vedic tradition. But what is missing was Kaishiki. What is missing is the dance element. So the four Vedas are not able to provide the Kaishiki Vritti. The Kaishiki Vritti, therefore, has to come from somewhere else. And for this, there is yet to be a process. The Apsaras were given by Brahma, and there is a long list of the names of these Apsaras in the Natya Shastra. And when Apsaras became part of the acting team of Bharat Muni, then Kaishiki Vritti became part of it and theatre was complete. However, there was much that was missing. And what was missing? As a matter of fact, what was missing is still something which was significant and which was important. And that was dance itself. So when various kinds of productions had been done by Bharat Muni, and when a theatre house had been made for playing of theatre, because theatre needs a safe place for production, therefore Brahma had asked Vishwakarma to make a theatre house. And in order to make the theatre house a well protected place, all the devatas took their places in it, that is, took upon themselves the responsibility of preserving its various elements. And a whole elaborate ceremony of Ranga Pujan was also performed. This ceremony of Ranga Pujan describes how each devata was placed in the theatre premises at different places. Now, placing means appointing a place which you protect. This is something which is still done today in a puja where we call Anganyas, so that we call upon a devata and we say that Saraswati, come and protect my throat. Then we call another devata and we say, come and protect my shoulders. A third devata to protect my belly, my legs, my joints, etc. That is called Nyas. This whole thing is a very ancient custom, and this is found in the Natya Shastra. So, when this whole ceremony had been done, then Brahma said that come, let us go to Bhagwan Shankar, let us go to Shiva, let us go to his abode Kailasha, and there we will make our presentation. So Bharat Muni was certainly very excited, and he made a production there. Brahma said that, okay, perform a full-length play. Yojaya Amrita Manthanam. So one of the genres in Natya Shastra called Samavakar was performed. Samavakar, you know, is about a contest between the Devas and the Asuras. It's a story of them. So when this was performed, it was liked very much, and before that production, Bharat Muni also performed a Purvaranga. So Shiv said that, okay, show me what you have, and Bharat Muni performed the Purvaranga, and then he performed another play which is called Tripuradaha, that is the burning of the three cities by Shiva. So in order to please Shiva, to talk about his acts, he did this. And after watching all this, Shiva said something which was extremely important and which is really the crux of our argument today. So he says that, I have seen your production. Bharat Muni, I have seen your production. Brahmaji, I have seen the productions which you have managed to get performed by Bharat Muni, and it's all very good. But there is no dance in it. So he says, what is dance? Mayapidam smritam nrityam sandhya kaleshu nrityata nana karana sanyuktair angaharair vibhushitam. So this is the 13th verse of the And what is this most significant thing? It is nritta. Now remember, the technical word here is nritta. It is not nritya. Nritya is a different term. Out of the three terms, natya, nritta and nritya, we should remember that nritta is what Shiva is talking about here. That is, in the 13th verse of the 4th chapter, Maya apidam smritam nrittam sandhyakaleshu nrityata. There is a mistake in printing in the latest edition of Baroda Natya Shastra, where this nrittam has been made into nrityam. So don't go after that reading, because it doesn't gel with the whole argument and the whole description of the particular form of dance which is given there. So Maya apidam smritam nrittam. Now what is this nritta? It is nana karanu sanyuktair angaharair vibhushitam. This nritta has many karanas, angaharas, and it is decorated. It consists of all these. And how it is to be used? Why am I talking to you about this? That is, Shiva says that why, Bharat Muni, am I giving you this art? Why am I talking to this? He says that Purva Ranga Vidhau Asmin Tvaya Samyak Prayojyata. That this nritta is something which you should use in the Purva Ranga. And in the Purva Ranga, where should you use it? Vardhavana Yogeshu Giteshu Asariteshu Cha. He says that when in the Purvarang you include songs called Vardhamanaka, when you use songs called Asarita, and there are several other songs, it is in those songs that you will use this nritta. Now this nritta will be performed because there are certain constituents to it which make this up. Now, as you all know, the constituents of this nritta are karanas, angaharas, rechakas and pindibandhas. And we shall talk about them one by one. Karanas are the basic language. Karanas go to form the angaharas. Then there are rechakas, and then there are pindibandhas. And it is in pindibandhas that the secret of creating the forms of devatas lies. And it is from there that we will come to the origin of Murti Puja. At this point, what is important for us to understand is something like this. That nritta becomes something essential for Purvarang. Purvarang, is it just some bit of song and dance which is done before the actual play begins? Or is it something more important? Is it something part of the Vedic tradition? Or is it just a device which is used as a preliminary to Natya? Let us say, is it something like what is called a prologue in Shakespeare, that somebody comes and tells you about what the story is going to be? Now, that is not the case. We have that kind of a prologue which is called Prastavana before an ancient play began. But Purvarang is an entirely different thing. Purvarang is an elaborate use of dance, and it is a whole ritual which is essential, not just for the sake of preparing the audience to watch the play, but it is an essential element in making the audience worship the divine. So, worship of the divine, Devata Paritosha, pleasing the gods, is the most essential part of Purvarang. Purvarang is something which is a very elaborate process. In this Purvarang, first of all, the musicians come from the two back doors or the doors at the wall. They come and take their positions on the backstage where there is a Vedika or a small platform on which they sit. In ancient times, the musicians used to sit straight before our eyes. They were not tucked away somewhere conveniently in the side wings or somewhere far away. They were never thought of as disturbance to the main performance, but they were the controllers of the main performance and the essential part of performance, just as Greek dance and music was the essential part of performance in Greek theatre. Now, you all know this part of the story, and you know the story very well. The whole story is about Tandu giving the education of Nritta to Bharat. That Shiva calls Tandu and he asks them to give the knowledge. He orders him, Achakshva Bharataya, he clearly says this, the Angaharanam Prayoga, which has the Karanas and the Rechakas also. So, the element of elaborate dance is known to you in three aspects very well. You know the Karanas, and highly impressive work has been done on this by several dancers, and very good work has been done by Padma Subramaniam. Then, in the actual formation of Angaharas, we are quite familiar with what the Angaharas are doing. And then we know what the Rechakas are. And you know the Rechakas are four kinds. There is Pada Rechak, then there is Kati Rechak, Hasta Rechak, and there is the Griva Rechaka. So you are all familiar with it. And then there is the Pindi Bandha. Now, when Shankara was dancing, then his dance was called Tandava because it was the dance of a male. There are two reasons why the word Tandav is used. Number one, the word Tandav means the knowledge which is given to Bharat Muni and to us by Tandu, and therefore it is Tandav. But then, when Tandav is done by a woman, when it is done by Parvati, then it is called a Lasya. And in the Natya Shastra, in the verse 256 of the 4th chapter, Rechakai Rangaharaischa Nrityantam Vikshya Shankaram Sukumara Prayogena Nrityati Smacha Parvati. So Parvati performed the same Angaharas, Rechakas and Pindi Bandhas which Shankar was doing, but Sukumara Prayogena. The difference was that it was done with great lasya, it was done with great softness, and it was the softness which made it into lasya. So, when Parvati does it, when a woman does it, when it is done by the female sattva or the female power of dance, then it is called lasya. So, Tandav and lasya has this distinction, but the essential element or the grammar is the same. It is in the usage and the rendering that one becomes more manly and is called Tandav, and the other is called Sukumar Prayog, and that is the lasya. So, dear friends, this is the end of the first part of my lecture, and after 5 minutes we shall have the second part, and after 5 minutes come back and I will continue with the theme of Pindi Bandhas giving birth to Murti Puja.